The sea whispered like a secret that morning. Waves licked the rocky shoreline with a rhythm only the wind understood. The town of Bell Hollow, curled at the edge of the coast like an old photograph, had not changed in years. Fishing boats bobbed in their places, and the scent of salt and whetstone drifted through cobblestone streets. Elias stood by his window, brush in hand, canvas blank. He had woken early, as he always did, before the sun had fully decided to rise. His apartment was perched above the old bakery, and each morning the scent of cinnamon and warm bread fought the cold of dawn. But Elias was not a man of food. He lived on colors burnt sienna, cobalt blue, and the haunting shade of ash gray that reminded him of rain. For the past 2 weeks, he had been trying to paint a woman he saw in a dream. He didn't know her name, or if she even existed. Just the feeling, her eyes like sorrow dipped in honey, her lips soft with silence, her hair wind-blown and wild like storm-tossed seaweed. She stood in the middle of a field of lilies, her dress fluttering, the sky behind her both bright and broken. But every time Elias tried to capture her on canvas, the lines betrayed him. That morning, as he stepped out with his worn satchel and sketchbook, the town felt different. It was market day. The streets were lined with stalls, wooden carts and cloth awnings in soft pastel colors. Children chased each other between the baskets of oranges and sacks of flour. Bells chimed from the chapel at the center of town, and an old man played violin by the fountain. And then he saw her. She stood beside a flower stall, her fingers gently brushing the petals of a bouquet of white lilies. Her hair was dark, caught in a lazy braid that trailed over her shoulder. She wore a cream-colored coat, a little too big for her frame, and a red scarf wrapped around her neck like a quiet flame. Elias stopped breathing. The woman from his dream. He stared too long. She noticed. Their eyes met. She tilted her head, offered the smallest, politest smile, then turned her attention back to the flowers. Elias, heart thudding with an artist's thrill, ducked behind a bookstall and cursed himself silently. He wasn't someone who approached strangers. He barely spoke to anyone at all, except for the old baker downstairs and the woman who delivered his paints. Still, he watched her from a distance as she paid for the lilies and walked away down a side street, her silhouette slipping into the folds of morning like ink into paper. That night, Elias painted until his fingers cramped. The lilies came first, long, elegant, white as morning. Then her coat, her scarf, her braid. He tried to capture her expression from memory, that quiet curve of lips, the softness behind her eyes, the sadness he imagined was there. But it wasn't enough. No painting could do her justice. He titled it "The Girl in Lilies," and hung it on his wall, unfinished. A week passed before he saw her again. He was sketching the church tower from the cafe across the square when a soft voice broke his focus. "You're the one who stares at people and draws them, aren't you?" He looked up and nearly dropped his pencil. She was standing right in front of him, her arms folded over a paper bag full of books. Her red scarf again. Her eyes amused. Elias stumbled. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I didn't mean to stare. You were painting me." He blinked. "How did you?" "I saw the sketch in the gallery window. The lilies. That's me, isn't it?" He turned red. I didn't mean to. I had this dream before I met you. You were there. In a field of lilies. I tried to paint it, and then I saw you at the market and..." She laughed. Not cruelly. Like water breaking through tension. "You're not very good at lying." I'm not very good at anything, Elias admitted. She sat down across from him without asking. Lillian, she said, offering her hand. With an E at the end. He took it, hesitantly. Elias. I know. They sat for a while in silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that stretches comfortably between two people who don't yet know each other, but somehow feel no rush. Elias studied her in the softest way, trying not to let his gaze linger too long, even though every line of her face begged to be remembered. Lillian tilted her head, watching him with that gentle smirk. So, she said eventually, do you always paint strangers you see on the street? No, Elias replied, just you. She arched a brow. I mean, not like that. Look, I'm really not good at this. At what? Talking. Lillian smiled. You're doing fine. He couldn't tell if she was teasing him or being sincere, but either way, he found himself exhaling a breath he didn't realize he was holding. I like your sketchbook, she said, nodding at the leather-bound journal on the table. Do you mind? He handed it to her. Her fingers traced the edge before she opened it carefully, like it was something sacred. Page after page of soft charcoal portraits, street scenes, twisted trees, old fishermen, the chapel steps. And, eventually, the first sketch of her lilies blooming all around her feet, her eyes lost somewhere far beyond the paper. She paused on that one. This is me, she whispered. It's not finished, Elias said quickly. I never really captured you. She didn't respond for a moment. Then she gently closed the book. You see things, she said. I try. No, I mean really see them. Most people look, but they don't see. I think you're one of those people too. She smiled again, softer this time. A breeze stirred her hair as the sky shifted with the scent of approaching rain. Walk with me, she asked. Elias nodded. He would followed her anywhere. They strolled through Bell Hollow like they had done it 100 times. Past the harbor where the gulls cried overhead. Past the old theater that no longer showed films. Past the rusted carousel that still played broken lullabies on windy days. Do you live here? Elias asked. Sometimes, Lillian replied, cryptically. Sometimes. I come and go. I work in a flower shop in the next town over. But I like it here more. It's quieter. Feels like the town has secrets. It does. Like what? There's a house near the cliffs that no one lives in. People say it's haunted. But I think it's just lonely. Lillian looked at him for a long moment. That's a sad way to describe a house. I guess I see sad things. Maybe that's why you paint. Maybe. She stopped in front of the stone fountain at the edge of the square. The one with the angel missing a wing. Do you believe in fate? She asked. Elias hesitated. I believe in accidents that feel like fate. Lillian turned toward him, her face unreadable. And what do you think this is? He swallowed. Something I don't want to be over yet. The air between them tightened. A single drop of rain fell on her cheek. She didn't flinch. Meet me here again, she said, stepping back. Tomorrow. Same time. And then she was gone, her red scarf disappearing around the corner, like a brush stroke fading into canvas. That night, Elias didn't sleep. He painted. Not just her face this time, but the way she moved, the way she leaned forward when she spoke, the way her eyes flickered like candlelight in the wind. He painted her in the rain, surrounded by lilies. He painted her laughing, standing at the edge of the sea. And still, it wasn't enough. His room was filled with her now sketches, watercolors, half-done portraits. She had slipped into his art the way water seeps into soil, silently, completely. And for the first time in years, Elias felt something he hadn't dared to feel in a long time. Hope. The next day, Elias arrived early. He sat on the edge of the fountain, sketchbook in hand, heart pacing like it was caught in a dance it didn't know the steps to. The angel statue loomed beside him, one wing outstretched, the other broken clean off. It felt oddly fitting. Minutes passed. Then 20. Then 40. She didn't come. He tried not to panic. Maybe she was late. Maybe she got caught up. Maybe she was testing him see if he'd wait. So he waited. The sky shifted to gold. A group of children ran past him, laughing. A couple walked by, hand in hand. The flower stall closed. The violinist packed up. Still, no Lillian. Elias stood. The ache in his chest surprised him. He hadn't even known her long, but somehow, it felt like losing something precious before he even had the right to call it his. He took the long way home, sketching as he walked, not really seeing what his pencil was doing. The lines came out wrong. The light was all off. Her absence made everything feel slightly tilted. Back in his apartment, the lilies he bought the day before were already beginning to droop. The next morning, she was there, at the cafe, sitting in the same seat she had taken before, flipping through a paperback with a worn spine. Elias nearly dropped his coffee. "You stood me up," he said as he approached, a touch of wounded pride in his voice. Lillian looked up, smiling like moonlight. "I know." "Why?" "Because I wanted to see if you'd wait." "And you did." Elias sighed, unable to stay mad. "You're difficult. I've been called worse." He slid into the seat across from her. "I thought something had happened." She closed the book and set it down. "It did." "What?" Lillian didn't answer right away. Her fingers traced the edge of the coffee cup, slowly, thoughtfully. "I had an episode," she said finally, softly. Elias blinked. "Episode?" She didn't look at him. "My heart. It acts like it's older than I am. Sometimes it gets tired." There was a pause, heavy but not dramatic. Just truth laid bare in the middle of a sleepy town square. "Is it serious?" Elias asked. She nodded. "How long have you?" "Since I was 16. He sat with that for a moment. "Is that why you come and go from town?" "Sometimes I disappear. Sometimes I stay. I follow what feels right." "And yesterday?" "I wanted to come. I did. But it felt like the universe was asking me to rest." Elias didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded, and reached across the table, letting his hand rest near hers close, but not touching. Lillian looked down, then placed her fingers lightly over his. "I'm glad you came back," she said. "I would come back 100 times." They spent the day together. No plans. Just wandering. She showed him the cliffs where she used to read when she was younger. He showed her his tiny studio, walls covered in canvases, most of them unfinished. She paused in front of the one of her in the lilies and said nothing for a long time. "Why lilies?" she finally asked. "I don't know. They feel like you. They're morning flowers, Elias." "I know. And still you chose them." He looked at her, quiet. Maybe I was painting something I hadn't realized yet. She smiled sadly. Or maybe you always knew. That night, she let him walk her to her house. It was small, tucked at the edge of the hill, with ivy climbing up its sides and a crooked mailbox that had long forgotten how to shut properly. She fumbled for her key in the porch light. "Can I see you again tomorrow?" he asked. "You're very sure of yourself." "No, I'm just afraid if I don't ask, you'll vanish again." Lillian turned to him. "I don't vanish. I just fade a little sometimes. Then let me find you when you do." She leaned in then, slowly, her forehead resting lightly against his. "I'm not safe to love, Elias." "I don't want safe," he whispered. And in the hush of night, with the sound of the sea in the distance and lilies still blooming in his mind, she kissed him. Elias dreamed of her again. But this time, the field of lilies was wilted, the sky overcast. Lillian stood at the edge of the frame, her face half in shadow, lips parted like she wanted to speak but no sound came. Just the endless rush of waves, louder and louder, as if the ocean was swallowing the world. He woke up before sunrise, heart drumming. Her scarf was still hanging on the back of his chair, the red thread catching morning light like fire. She had left it the night before. After the kiss, after the soft murmur of goodbye. She turned at the door, smiled that aching smile of hers, and walked into the dark with nothing but the moon to guide her. Elias hadn't stopped thinking about her since. By noon, he stood at her door. Lillian answered with her hair pulled up in a lazy bun, a cardigan slipping off one shoulder, and sleepy eyes that still held a shimmer of affection. "You're early," she said. "You didn't say when to come." She opened the door wider, letting him in. The house smelled like rosemary and old books. It was small, cluttered in a charming way, paintings half hung, mugs with dried lavender, a record player spinning something low and jazzy in the background. There were photos on the mantel. A younger Lillian. A woman who looked like her, smiling in a hospital bed. A black and white image of a man in uniform. Time worn in their faces, but love undeniable. "Your family?" Elias asked, glancing at them. Lillian nodded. "My mother. She passed when I was 18. The man is my grandfather." He noticed there were no recent photos. Nothing past a certain year. As if time had stopped in this house. Or as if Lillian had chosen not to mark it. She handed him a cup of tea. "I have something for you." Elias blinked. "Oh." She disappeared into the next room and returned with a small wrapped object. Inside was a wooden box of oil paints, some new, some clearly used. Rich colors he didn't have in his collection. Ochres, plums, deep violets. "These were my mother's," Lillian said softly. "She was an artist too." Elias stared at them, then at her. "I can't." "You can," she interrupted. She would wanted them to be used. "I'll take care of them." "I know." A pause. "You told me yesterday I wasn't safe to love," he said quietly. "I remember. I'm in danger now anyway." Her eyes met his. She didn't say don't. She didn't say you shouldn't. She simply reached for his hand and held it. They spent the afternoon by the cliffs, where the sea raged below like a restless beast. The wind tugged at their coats, and her scarf fluttered like a flame caught in motion. She lay on the grass beside him, head on his chest, as he sketched the sky with his fingers in the air. "Do you think people can die from loving too much?" she asked. "I think people die from not loving enough." She closed her eyes, lashes catching salt wind. My heart gets tired, Elias. Some days it feels heavy just to breathe. Then let me carry the weight with you. You don't know what you're offering. Maybe not. But I know what I feel. She was quiet for a long time. The wind softened. Somewhere far below, waves crashed against the rocks in rhythm. I used to be angry at my body, she said. At how it betrayed me. How it refused to let me grow old. I thought I'd be bitter forever. And now? She looked up at him. Now I think maybe love is a kind of rebellion. Against fear. Against time. Against dying. He kissed her, not to silence her but to tell her he agreed. That evening, as they walked back through the town square, Lillian stopped suddenly. Wait here, she said. She ducked into the flower shop. Moments later, she returned with a single lily. It's not the season yet, she said, but this one bloomed early. She tucked it behind his ear, smiling. Why a lily, he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, because one day, when you think of me, I want you to remember something beautiful, even if it hurts. They walked the rest of the way in silence, though not the kind that was empty or cold. It was the kind filled with warmth where every shared glance said I'm here and every brush of fingers whispered I want to stay. Elias had never known silence could feel like this. When they reached her doorstep, Lillian turned to him with a look that hovered between joy and melancholy. I want to show you something tomorrow, she said. Another secret place. She shook her head. A part of me. His brows knit, curious. Should I be nervous? No, she smiled, but you should be ready to see me differently. Before he could ask what she meant, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Then slipped inside, leaving him with the scent of lilies and the feeling of unfinished sentences. The next morning, Elias brought his paints. Lillian met him in a long coat, buttoned up to her throat. Her hands were cold when he took them, but her eyes were bright. They took the train one town over. She said little during the ride, resting her head against the window as the countryside blurred past. Elias studied her, the quiet curve of her mouth, the faint color in her cheeks. There was a fragility to her that day, like glass warmed by sunlight. When they arrived, she led him down a winding road, past quiet houses and shuttered shops, until they reached a low brick building tucked behind a grove of olive trees. A hospice. Elias froze. Lillian squeezed his hand gently. This is where I go, sometimes. For monitoring. For preparation. Preparation, his voice cracked. She didn't flinch. For when it gets worse. He looked at her, throat tight. I'm not dying now, she added. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But it's in me, Elias. The slow fading. I want you to see it, not just hear about it. They sat with a nurse named Vera who greeted Lillian like family. She gave Elias a look that was both kind and cautious. They took a short tour. The walls were lined with paintings, most of them flowers. Lillian smiled at one near the end of the hall, a burst of lilies against a stormy sky. My mother painted that, she said. Elias stepped closer. He saw it immediately, the resemblance. The fierce beauty, the tremble in the petals, the defiance in the way they bloomed in darkness. She was sick too, he asked softly. She died here. Peacefully. He looked at her. You're not your mother. I know. But I might follow her sooner than I'd like. He hated how calm she sounded. They sat in the courtyard afterward. A nurse wheeled out a man in his 70s who nodded at them with tired eyes. Elias glanced around at the others' residents reading, sleeping, staring into distance, and wondered how Lillian could come here and still speak with so much light in her voice. "This place doesn't scare you?" he asked. "It used to. Now, it grounds me. Makes me cherish the hours I have that don't feel like this." She turned to him. "That's why I go back to Bell Hollow. To remember I'm still living." Elias reached for her hand. "Then let us keep doing that. Living. As long as we can." She gave a small smile. "You mean that?" "Every word." They returned home just before dusk. The train hummed like a lullaby. Lillian fell asleep on his shoulder, and Elias didn't move an inch, afraid to disturb her peace. That night, he painted like a man possessed. He used the paints she gave him: the ochre for her skin in twilight, violet for her laughter, a splash of silver gray for her fragility, and red, bold red, for the life in her that still burned despite everything. When he finished, it wasn't just a portrait. It was a confession. A memory and a prayer. A way of saying don't go without using words. The next day, it rained. Elias found Lillian on the pier, her red scarf soaked, her hair plastered to her forehead. She stood looking out at the sea, the wind pulling at her coat. "You'll get sick," he said, slipping his jacket over her shoulders. I needed to feel something cold. Something real. He didn't ask why. He just held her from behind. "You know what's strange?" she whispered. "Even when I think about dying, I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of leaving behind things unfinished. Unspoken." Elias tightened his arms around her. "Then say it." She turned in his embrace, rain glistening on her cheeks. "I love you." It felt like lightning, bright, terrifying, beautiful. He leaned in, forehead to hers. "I love you too." And in the rain, with the sea roaring behind them and lilies still blooming in his mind, they kissed again. Not a kiss of beginning, but the kind that feels like a memory before it's even over. The days blurred, as if time itself wanted to pretend it wasn't slipping away. Lillian's breath had grown softer, her voice quieter, but her eyes, they still held fire. That soft, defiant glint that said not yet. She spent most of her time on the garden bench now, wrapped in Elias's coat, a journal always in her lap. Some days she wrote. Some days she just sat, watching the wind dance through the lilies. "I like to think they bloom for me," she said one morning, her voice barely more than a whisper. "They do," Elias said, crouching beside her. "Every single one." He had stopped painting for a while. The colors felt heavy. But something inside him stirred every time he looked at her, this girl who defied decay with poetry and quiet bravery. So he painted again. Not the sickness. Not the fading. Just her. In full light. In spring. But she was getting worse. The doctor's visits were shorter now. No more talks of long-term plans. Only comfort. Only now. One night, as the rain whispered against the windows, Lillian asked him to read to her. He chose a poem by Neruda. Halfway through, her hand found his, and she whispered, "Do you remember what I said about color?" He nodded. "When I go, promise me you won't paint me as someone who disappeared. You won't disappear." She smiled softly. "Everyone does, eventually. But paint me as someone who lived." "I will," he said, holding her gaze. "I swear." The rain fell harder. Somewhere in the distance, Thunder rolled. Elias? Yes. I think I'm tired now. He stroked her hair gently. Then rest. I'm here. She exhaled, long and slow, and her body settled into his arms like a memory returning home. The funeral was held under a sky full of lilies. She had asked to be buried beneath the tree in Bell Hollow, the one that bloomed each spring with flowers as pale as snow. Elias spoke few words. He didn't need to. Her journal lay in his hands. He read only one line: I lived like I knew I would die. And loved like I'd never leave. He painted her, as promised. Not the hospital bed. Not the moment she left. But the first time she looked at him by the sea, her scarf in the wind, her eyes full of the sky. It became his masterpiece. He called it Liliane, in bloom. And in the corner of the canvas, hidden in a soft stroke of white, he wrote, she never said goodbye. She became the color instead.